Some items that I think need to be increasingly focused upon in terms of our mutual agenda, Russia and the United States, for the days ahead, for the future. It's important, I think, because these are challenges, but they also represent opportunities. And I don't mean this in any specific way to criticize our current administrations on both sides, because a number of the items on my list are already on their list, and they're working hard. But I do think that increasingly, the two of us can provide leadership, in many cases bilaterally, and in many other cases multilaterally, to move ahead on the agenda that faces not only Russia and the United States, but the international community across the scope of the globe on which we all live. I'd like to begin with some items in the security area and in the arms control and disarmament area. And over the years, I've had the pleasure to be involved from time to time in working on these sets of issues in the Soviet American and Russian American context. Indeed, one of my earliest opportunities as a very junior American officer was to join the test ban delegations of Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. And extremely high up, and indeed almost in the stratosphere of the Soviet delegation, was Yuri Mikhailovich Vorontsov. I don't know whether he recalls my sporadic attendance at those meetings, but I recall his presence. And many years later, we had great opportunities to work together, both in New York and in Washington and Moscow, which I treasure. Control have been, and I hope will remain, the central issue of U.S.-Russia relations, as indeed a number of my colleagues have already pointed out. I think first and foremost, we need to do what has already been signaled, to save and preserve those elements of our existing strategic arms control links that are worthy to be carried off into the future. But also to support our role as important performers under Article 6 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I think it's critically important as well that we undertake a new round of strategic disarmament negotiations, looking toward reduction of delivery vehicles, and I would hope nuclear weapons as well, in a target of perhaps 50% over the next 5 or so years, as an important effort that we could join together in helping to make the world more secure, but also to demonstrate to those that we ask not to move toward nuclear weapons that we too are doing our part. I mentioned a moment ago that I had the opportunity early on to work some 48 years ago on the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. The United States now needs to move forward to ratify that agreement. It is long since time that we put it in place, and all of the nuclear powers are currently maintaining a moratorium in that particular area, and it needs to be strengthened and ratified by a treaty that has long since been drafted, and a treaty which provides serious methods for assuring, through verification, its performance. Next, I believe it is important as well to take another element of voluntary moratorium in the relationships among the nuclear powers and put that into solid, verifiable treaty form. And this is the cessation of the manufacture of fissile material for use in nuclear weapons. Again, ideas have been on the table for many years. Again, proposals have been made. But again, we lack in moving that particular set of activities forward, something that as well would contribute to our obligations under Article 6 of the NPT. And next, I think it is time, as has been proposed by many others, for the 5 nuclear powers recognized in the Non-Proliferation Treaty to work together to set up among them a method for providing, on a competitive basis, low-enriched fissionable material for use all around the world in civil nuclear reactors. Perhaps, too, some of the material we take out of our nuclear weapons as we cut down the number of those weapons can be blended down to the pattern of the now almost finished U.S.-Russian agreement to take 500 tons of highly enriched material from Russian stockpiles and make it available to the international community and the United States as material for the production of electricity. I would hope, too, that we would think about making the International Atomic Energy Agency a provider of last resort of fissionable material to states requiring it in their civil reactor programs as long as those states met a single but significantly important requirement, that they were observing all of their obligations not to proliferate into nuclear weapons. This would help to take away the notion that this kind of an arms control step would also become used as leverage to achieve other important, but in my view, distracting objectives in moving ahead to greater security and greater stability for all of us. We've had a discussion here today very briefly about missile defense. There are many in my country who doubt the importance of this and the efficacy of this. But nevertheless, it is moving ahead, and there are concerns about states whose perhaps capacities to be restrained and control the use of such weapons, either in times of crisis or to take small advantage in difficult situations, and whether the system that is now being proposed can be effective. I, for one, would like to see not just joint cooperation in deploying a system, but perhaps joint and further cooperation in examining whether, in a strategic sense, such a system itself will really serve our mutual objectives, or whether there are other ways to meet these needs. In the meantime, Russia and the United States have now initiated an agreement on future nuclear cooperation across the broad spectrum, mainly focused on civil nuclear activities. It is now time, certainly for my country, to move forward and suggest that we sign this agreement and bring it into force and use that as a basis